Many of us probably cannot remember when there was no school lunch. We grew up with it and accepted it as part of every school day. But there were times in our nation's history when meals at school were the exception and not the rule. Today, however, child nutrition programs operate in over 100,000 schools across this nation. Whether you live in Anchorage, Alaska, or Key West, Florida, school lunch is available for children. What's even more amazing is that the federal nutrition standards and rules are the same in every one of these schools that participate in the National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program. Let's look at the remarkable story of how child nutrition programs began and grew into the truly extraordinary ones that they are today. As early as the mid-19th century, people recognized the need to feed hungry children. They knew that many children were undernourished and came to school hungry. So with the help of volunteers and the children themselves, communities organized meals at school. The danger of malnutrition among children increased with the Depression of the 1930s. The federal government established several nationwide programs to respond to the economic crisis. One was the Agriculture Act of 1935, which authorized the federal government to purchase surplus foods being produced by the farmers. Today, we commonly refer to this as the Commodity Distribution Program. Another vital program was the Works Projects Administration, or WPA, established by President Franklin D. Roosevelt to help get unemployed Americans back to work and the country out of the Depression. Many schools used workers employed through WPA to start school lunch programs. And by 1941, WPA was operating school lunches in every state, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico. The economic boost of World War II eliminated the need for the WPA, and it was deactivated in 1943. However, Congress continued to fund the school lunch program on an annual basis. The need for this funding was shown by the fact that 1/3 of all men rejected for military service were physically unfit because of conditions related to poor nutrition. On June 4, 1946, President Harry S. Truman, recognizing the vital need for this program, signed the National School Lunch Act. Its stated purpose was to safeguard the health and well-being of the nation's children and to encourage the domestic consumption of nutritious agricultural commodities and other food. This date marks the beginning of our modern National School Lunch Program, or NSLP. As you can see in this extraordinary preamble of the law, which Congress has not changed since its adoption in 1946, school lunch was established as a measure of national security. By the close of 1946, the entire country had established school lunch programs. Approximately 6 million children participated in the program that year. More than 100 million lunches were served at no cost to the children. Each state received a flat appropriation for the year based on enrollment. When the money was spent, there was no more. On October 11, 1946, the Food Service Directors Conference and the National School Cafeteria Association came together to form the American School Food Service Association, now called the School Nutrition Association. In 1954, Congress authorized funds for a special milk program, which provided a half pint of milk to school children daily. By 1962, the National School Lunch Act was gaining momentum. It also received its first major amendments during that year. Funding was changed from a grant based on enrollment to a grant based on participation. In addition, special financial assistance was given to schools with a high percentage of low-income children. A 1962 USDA study found that 9 million children still attended schools where there was no school lunch program. To focus attention on school lunch and encourage more schools to participate, the National School Lunch Week was established October 9, 1962, by a joint resolution of Congress. The Child Nutrition Act of 1966 was the next major legislation supporting school food service. This act authorized a pilot school breakfast program, extended the special milk program, and provided funds to purchase equipment. The growing problems of Americans' dietary deficiencies were highlighted by the CBS documentary Hunger in America and a nationwide study, Hunger USA, that reported 10 million persons were suffering from hunger and malnutrition. In 1968, the Special Food Service Program for Children was created, giving us the child care and summer food service programs to help address these issues. Child nutrition policy closed this decade with President Richard Nixon hosting a White House conference on food, nutrition, and health in December 1969. President Nixon said it was time to end hunger in America. John Perryman and Thelma Flanagan, pioneers in child nutrition, were on the panels. This conference fostered 19 pieces of legislation during the next decade that increased funding and made significant changes to child nutrition programs. The 1970s brought us permanent authorization of the school breakfast, special milk, and child care food programs. Offer versus Serve gave students a choice. The NET program provided nutrition education and training. In 1981, $1.4 billion was eliminated from the child nutrition budget. Even with these massive cuts, the child nutrition professionals met these challenges with greater determination to maintain the programs for all children. The programs became more efficient and fiscally responsible. In 1987, the National School Lunch Act was amended to permit adult daycare centers to receive reimbursement under the Child Care Food Program and to restore some of the programs eliminated earlier. The National Food Service Management Institute was authorized under Section 21 of the National School Lunch Act in 1989, funded in fiscal year 1991, and given permanent authorization in 1994. The Institute was founded on the campus of the University of Mississippi with the mission to provide information and services that promote the continuous improvement of child nutrition programs. Its first interim executive director was Dr. Jeanette Phillips, and its first permanent executive director was Dr. Josephine Martin. The 1990s brought a renewed interest in nutrition. Higher nutrition expectations moved into the school lunch arena. The USDA studied school lunches and discovered the meals were high in fat, but when compared to other lunch options, school meals still provided children the most nutritious choice. This led to a new day in the way school meals were planned. The Healthy Meals for Healthy Americans Act, enacted in October 1994, required that all school meals conform to the dietary guidelines for Americans by school year 1996-97. The Healthy School Meals Initiative was launched to improve the nutritional quality of school meals and increase nutrition education for children. USDA's Food and Nutrition Services established Team Nutrition to support improvements in school lunch. The world of technology came to school meals in the 1990s, and computer programs were developed to count the student meals by meal category, while the back-of-the-house computers analyzed the menu for nutrients. School meals could now be planned by the nutrients they provided, or by the traditional method of counting and measuring food components that were included in the menu. In January 1995, legislation was introduced to repeal the National School Lunch Act and replace it with block grants to the states. The school nutrition community immediately went into high gear to analyze this new bill and determine its effect on children. Within days of reading the new bill, Vivian Pallant, president of the School Nutrition Association, organized a task force to kill the bill. Marshall Matz, legislative counsel for SNA, and former SNA president Gene White were among those that planned the strategy to prevent the bill from becoming a law. Members of SNA from across America wrote letters and called their congressmen. School boards and state legislatures passed resolutions condemning the legislation. "Hungry children can't learn" was the slogan. The bill was defeated, and Congressman Newt Gingrich, the Speaker of the House and architect of the block grant concept, said that he would not let himself be school lunched again. The National School Lunch Act celebrated its 50th anniversary in 1996. In that school year, almost 4.3 billion lunches were served to nearly 40 million school children. In 1997, President Bill Clinton appointed Shirley Watkins as Undersecretary of Agriculture for Food, Nutrition, and Consumer Services. Shirley Watkins was the highest-level presidential appointee to come from the ranks of the school nutrition community. Having previously served as School Food and Nutrition Program Director for Memphis, Tennessee schools and as a past president of SNA, she brought first-hand knowledge of running a school meals program to USDA. Over the past several decades, the Department of Health and Human Services has been tracking the weight of Americans through the Haines studies. It was clear that Americans in every state were becoming fatter, but the greatest concern was over what was happening to the children. The sedentary lifestyle of America's children, coupled with diets heavy in processed fast foods, junk food, and soft drinks, had taken its toll. Researchers published results of a study in the Journal of the American Medical Association that found that 17.1% of children were overweight in 2004, compared to 13.9% in 2000 and less than 5% in the 1960s. Congress responded to these new facts by including a requirement for all schools participating in the National School Lunch Program to develop a local school wellness policy by the beginning of the 2006-2007 school year. Schools have responded with a range of policies including removing soft drink machines from the school campuses and adding new requirements for more physical activity during the school day. Change is happening. When the National School Lunch Act was signed in June 1946, President Harry S. Truman said, "Nothing is more important in our national life than the welfare of our children, and proper nourishment comes first in attaining this welfare." In studying the history of this remarkable program, we can see how local school nutrition employees, the School Nutrition Association, dedicated members of Congress, and the public's voice has made a difference in addressing the nutritional needs of children. Because of those who have worked to build and preserve school meals, we can proudly note that over 29 million children are participating in school lunch each day. As child nutrition professionals, we have much to be proud of. We've overcome many obstacles to provide our children with healthful meals that fuel them with the energy to learn and to play. The future of child nutrition programs and the future of our children looks bright. Most of the historical materials you have seen today are housed in the Child Nutrition Archives at the National Food Service Management Institute on the campus of the University of Mississippi in Oxford. The mission of the archives is to collect, preserve, and make available to researchers collections concerning the history of the federal child nutrition programs. The archives collects oral history interviews, personal and organizational papers, photographs, posters, artifacts, scrapbooks, and personal stories, especially the recollections of those who have been part of the history of the child nutrition programs. If you have materials you are interested in donating, know someone who has child nutrition related stories that should be recorded, or would like information on how to use the collection, please contact us.